brain-screen interface?
Okay, so the subject, the interface between our brain and those screens that we are now so dependent on, has a history. And I, being a historically minded person, I want to know the backstory. And I often ask people, what is the first art form? And you get, painting, sculpture, jewelry, fashion, whatever. Those things we know that our ancient ancestors made, the paintings about 30 to 40,000 years ago. But I say, no, all wrong. The first art form was movies. What? Movies weren't until da-da-da-da. I said, no, our brain is a movie-making device. It dreams. And in the dream, you have a screen, you have characters, you have a director, a writer, choreography, music, emotion. So our brains are creativity machines. And the tools we make change us. We create tools that didn't exist for whatever reason, and that reason is motivated by survival, but also by making life easier, not just survival, making life better. And as we create tools, they change us and we become dependent on our tools. How many of us could really survive the way our ancient ancestors did by hunting and gathering? So the current tool, the tool we're dealing with, that is changing our lives and creating this global village, is this internet and the access to it by way of these handheld devices or tabletop versions. It's color, it's movement, it's sound, it's documentary, it's fiction, it's animation, every possible information that is that we have produced, you can get it on the screen. Books are almost obsolete. You can Google or search for almost any information you're interested in. And that's all good, You can connect with your friends and family all over the world, and those are all the good things. But with every invention, with every new tool, there's also ways to use it which are destructive. And some of it is implicit, some of it's explicit. Explicitly, we're seeing today all the weaponization of social media. And it's a big challenge. What do we do about that? This wonderful, emotionally, socially connecting instrument can also be a weapon of war. But more specifically, down to the brain and the screen itself, the novelty, the activity, excites the brain, positive stress, entertainment, laughing, scary movies, learning, information, all this stuff is very enticing to the brain. And then the games that are now ever more complex and brilliant and beautiful and fun, and can be played again and again and again, and levels of mastery higher and higher. They are addictive. And this is perhaps the greatest challenge to this new tool that has become essential to life, but it's also addictive. Now, many people say, oh, addiction, bad. But, what's not addictive? What things that are pleasurable and good for us that we like so much, we do it to the point of self-sabotage. Eating, drinking, playing. We can do anything, the most benign thing, to the point that it is addictive, or a better term I like is self-sabotaging. So the brain's need to repeat it, to do it again, do it better, get more, that's driven by a complex brain structures, reward systems, neurotransmitters, that once they're activated, they start to self-activate. They loop, and they the term in addiction is chase the high, which is a combination of dopamine and adrenaline. Eventually, in this chase the high, which could be a computer screen, from social media to gaming to stock market investing or whatnot, when it is stuck, when it loops, it then goes from excitement stress to chronic stress. I need to go back. You know, I lost $5 in my last trade. I need to get it back and then some. And this now becomes compulsive and no longer driven by a wish, but now driven by brain circuitry that is literally taking you out of your mind into a drive to repeat and to pursue something in the brain, a high, which you no longer can attain. That's a complex but fairly simple mechanism whereby the dopamine, which is involved in reward pursuit and attainment, gets burnt out. Literally, we burn out the dopamine system, so as much as you activate it, you can't get high anymore, but you need it to feel normal. And if you have burnt out that system, adrenaline helps you chase it, get ramped up and chase it. And you have to do that to feel normal. If not, you're depressed or anxious. So once you burn out the dopamine system and the adrenal system continues to chase the high in one way or another, you're also activating cortisol, which is the down-regulatory hormone, but it is also toxic when it is chronically produced. And elevated cortisol levels, we know, are poisonous to everything from the stress regulatory system in the brain to all of the tissues that run our lives. So addiction to screens is certainly something that will require mindful management. And the interface between neuroscience and medicine and computer design is only just beginning. I've been to a couple of neuroscience and gaming conferences out on the West Coast that are just beginning to introduce these two elements and sitting in the same rooms. And gaming has used brain science to exploit making addictive games for financial gain, just like the tobacco industry has exploited addiction science to make a better nicotine delivery system. We also need a medical side, a recovery and healing side, to be just as much a part of creating tools that are we understand how to regulate them. It doesn't mean addiction will go away or there won't be plenty of burnt out young brains who have lost their identities and live in a computer virtual world. But we need to understand that it's possible, just as you take your first glass of wine at 15 at a Sunday dinner. You could become an alcoholic with a combination of genes, environment, and stress. It doesn't mean that we should get rid of alcohol, but it does mean the more mindful we are about these underlying mechanisms, the more we will be attuned to the needs of those who get in trouble. And ultimately, that is what we need to cultivate collectively to protect and preserve our health and our mind-body relationships as we become ever more dependent on technology to function.